All right, depending on when you're watching this, it's Friday the 13th, or it's not. But it is October when I'm shooting it. So we got the Friday the 13th in October, and that's pretty dope. And everybody on YouTube usually does Friday the 13th content. Those movies have been talked about to death. Uh, everybody's done them. So I thought I would do something a little bit different, and I would tell a story that connects to Friday the 13th. I wanted to tell this as a Freddy vs. Jason review, but other people are doing Freddy vs. Jason, and I don't have anybody to review it with. So I'll tell my story that revolves around Freddy vs. Jason and how Freddy vs. Jason cost me my first real girlfriend. So I grew up, I'm 40, I'm going to be 42 on October 23rd. I grew up in the 80s. The 80s was a perfect time for genre film. You're coming out of the 1970s where, grindhouse films were a big thing and people had more freedom to try things. And that progressed into the VHS era where now you could do wilder content for the home market, which allowed for a lot of schlock to come out. But also like movies in the wake of Star Wars, they were trying more fantasy, they were trying more sci-fi, they were trying different kinds of things. You had little rubber monster movies and Alien ripoffs and Star Wars ripoffs and all that good shit. Sword and Sandals movies in the wake of Conan the Barbarian. So I grew up in this perfect era, and of course the slasher movie. I grew up in this perfect era of renting movies at the mom and pop video shop, B&C Video in Marlton, New Jersey. It was within bike riding distance of my house, and my parents didn't care what we watched as long as, we didn't repeat anything to, neighborhood kids, and then our parents looked like assholes, and we weren't allowed to watch, porn, obviously. We were little kids. But I think a lot of me, especially, my first introduction to Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees was on Joe Bob or on USA Up All Night. TNT and USA networks would both do weekend, horror content. So I'd seen some of I would say by 86, I had seen a good portion of them that had come out at that point, only cut for television. So when I finally got a chance to see them on video and see what was missing, I was pretty fucking in on it because, you're a little kid. This is a day before the internet. It was a place you could see boobs. It was a place you could see, cool kills and stuff like that. So I was hardcore into the Freddy and Jason, Michael Myers and Leatherface and Pinhead and the Tall Man and all that shit. And then there was a period of time in the 90s when horror was pretty much dead up until Scream. The very first I saw Freddy's Dead in the theater because I won tickets through Barks Root Beer. Barks has Bite. And then my aunt took me to see Jason Goes to Hell in the theater when I was in 5th grade. But other than that, there was like Dr. Giggles. Like there wasn't a lot of horror out there. I saw like the people under the stairs in the theater, stuff like that, but there really wasn't a ton of it. But it was at the end of Jason Goes to Hell. Don't worry, I'm not. This preamble's going somewhere. At the end of Jason Goes to Hell, Freddy's glove comes up and grabs Jason's mask, pulls it down to hell. And it was Kane Hodder's hand inside that glove, so he was Freddy and Jason. He also was Leatherface at one point too because he was a stuntman on one of them. But that was when the first time I thought like, oh yeah, like what if Freddy versus Jason fight? Who would win that? I've seen Batman and Superman fight in the comic books. I've seen Godzilla fight King Kong. You've seen Abbott and Costello versus the Wolfman and the Mummy and all that shit. And Godzilla, all of his guys he fought. So versus movies, like, it didn't really dawn on me until then. I was like, oh yeah. And then from that point on, you had heard about, oh, it's going to happen. There was rights issues until, Freddy and Jason both found their way over to New Line. and then there was all these scripts that had come out, all these different versions. Like one of them was like there was a boxing match in hell, and then one of them like Jason stood trial. I just remember getting all these terrible Freddy versus Jason scripts at trade shows they would do in malls. They would have like unproduced scripts that you could buy. That's where I read Kevin Smith's Superman Lives for the first time. But yeah, and I actually learned how to write screenplay format from reading those. So, you know, it has double meaning. So yeah, so I had followed this all the way through, that this was going to happen one day, and I just remember talking to friends and people at the movie theater about like Freddy versus Jason and stuff. And then finally, it was getting made. It was getting made with Ronnie Yo as the director. He had done Bride of Chucky before that, and I think it was Ken Krinzinger was playing Jason in this one, because Derek Mears was Jason in the remake. Okay, they dumped Kane Hodder, which sucks because Kane Hodder is my Jason, as Jason for this other guy, because they wanted him to be bigger. They wanted like a Frankenstein monster for it. And before that, they had Jason X because they were trying to hold over the rights. Jason X is a lot of fun. I don't care what anybody says about that one. I genuinely enjoy the schlock of that movie, and I've done a whole video on it on this channel. Yeah, so now we know the story of where Freddy versus Jason came from. Now let's talk about Newt's love life, okay? So, and this is the second Friday the 13th themed review where I'm telling a story, about a personal story, that then people on Reddit can go, he has mental issues. Why would he talk about those things? That's so fucking weird. Why? You know? I'm sorry I'm not playing a character. I'm sorry I'm a real person, and some of this shit now I think is pretty fucking funny. The other one, Friday the 13th one, was, my parents basically split up because of Friday the 13th, the TV show, because my mom and my dad got into a big argument about my brother and I watching it, and then my dad went out that night and met somebody, and it was a whole thing. What are you going to do now? You know, it's like, it was 1987. What the fuck you want me to do? I'm going to laugh about it now because it's ridiculous. So, when I was in high school, I worked at the Marlton 8 movie theater, and I'd met a bunch of the kids who'd worked there for a really long time, became really good friends with this girl, Julie, and this kid, Steve. But she was, like, super religious, so that wasn't going anywhere. I was introduced to their friend, Amber, who worked at the Fashion Bug. So we kind of hit it off, and we're friendly. It was nothing more than that, really, but she was making an independent film that summer, and she had to do some monologues, so I basically showed her Chasing Amy and Clerks and Dogma and like a bunch of other movies that were very talky, Glengarry Glen Ross and stuff like that, Slacker, and so we kind of bonded over movies. And so she went away to college, I went away to film school, and we both came back for Thanksgiving break. But in that time, we had talked over Friendster and over AIM Messenger. And we were kind of getting closer, basically. It was a lot more flirtatious. So when she got back and I got back, we met up to hang out. And she was a very different person. When she came back, she was like super, hippie chick now, and like, weed was priority number one, which is fine, whatever. It's not my bag, but it is what it is. And so we were hanging out a lot. And so yeah, she became like my first like real girlfriend, so we spent a lot of time with her dealer. And then a lot, like, it was in this shady ass parking lot of a hotel that had like a windmill in front of it. Like, it looked like I was waiting for Don Quixote to show up in the parking lot. That, or over at Steve's house. And Steve was the first openly gay person that I had known. And while he was away at school, he decided he was going to write a nautical themed homosexual musical. None of my semen jokes were ever taken. What a waste. But I would sit there while they'd be smoking weed and doing that. So I was kind of out of my element a little bit. And she hated horror movies. I used to go to, I know I've talked about it before, Exhumed Films in Philadelphia. They would be doing shows. I'd be like, oh my God, let's go. And she's like, no, I hate horror movies. I'm not going to see horror movies. So we weren't off to a great start. We didn't really have a lot in common except for the fact that, you know, I'm well endowed and I eat pussy like it's going out of style. So that's probably why she kept me around. But I digress. Freddy vs. Jason was coming out, and I was super excited about it. And my theater that I worked at the time, I worked at Regal. I was the projection manager. We didn't get horror movies or like urban movies at my theater because the district manager said they didn't want to bring certain types of people in. And that's flat out what he said. So in 2002, I guess he was still processing 9/11 because you can't talk like that anymore. So it wasn't coming to my theater. It was going to the Adco Multiplex, which is actually where I saw where I saw Jason Goes to Hell too. So it was fitting. I bought tickets. I was like, dude, come on, like, you know, please go with me. I do everything you want to do. I pick you up from work. I take you here. I take you there. We're waiting for your weed guy in fucking Denmark, New Jersey, or whatever we were. I sit and I listen to you guys writing a musical that you don't include me in, and I'm not allowed to watch horror movies and stuff like that. I wound up watching a lot of Sex and the City because it was always on the TV there, and I was just like, whatever. Let's see what let's see what Carrie and Mr. Big are up to this week. So we were getting closer to Freddy vs. Jason. I got our tickets for opening night. My friend Kevin was going to come with me. Kevin did the video of Ghost House review last summer, the summer before that. And she's like, no, I'm not going. And, sometimes she go, oh, well, maybe, like, if I like scream or whatever, like, you'll hold my hand. I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. Like, that's cool. That's what it's all about. So then we get closer and closer and closer, and we're arguing about it. And it's so fucking stupid to be arguing about going to the movies to see Freddy vs. Jason. And then it turned into, well, if you go, we're breaking up. And I'm just like, really? Like, look, I know that I'm ugly, and I should just be happy that anyone wants to touch me or be around me. But she's really cute, and I was doing my best to, like, make it work. But I'm also not going to be given, even then, an ultimatum. I'm not going to be, America doesn't negotiate with terrorists. So we came to that Friday night, and she said, if you go, that's it, we're done. So I enjoyed Freddy vs. Jason. It's not perfect, but after all the years and years of waiting for it, I thought it gave us the best version of that movie that we could have gotten. We broke up. Yeah, it was funny because she waited for us in the parking lot of the movie theater so that we can get into an argument, and I kept trying to diffuse the situation. Like, are you really, like, it's one night? Like, we could go do I can go watch you smoke weed another night. So we broke up over Freddy vs. Jason. So Freddy vs. Jason versus Newt versus Amber, and whoever wins, Newt loses. I left the movie pretty happy with it. It's weird when the Destiny's Child chick says faggot. Even now, like, you watch it and you go, wow, this was 2003. Like, what are they doing saying that? They said that was from an older draft and it just stayed in because David Goyer actually wrote the last draft of it. He went on to do, the Christopher Nolan Batman movies and stuff like that. The Blade movies. He directed Blade 3, which was a disaster. And he got his start on Dollman vs. Demonic Toys for Charles Band. But so we broke up over that, and people were just like, because I was running the comic book store at the same time as I was running in the movie theater, and people just couldn't believe it. And then people kept saying, you made the right choice. But then, I met Christy, like, almost right after that, and then she and I dated for a really, really long time. And then when we broke up, I met the redhead, and she and I were together for a long time. So, and then Amber and I have been friends since then too. Like, she was the first Amber I dated. I dated another Amber after that. A lot of Christie's, Kelsey's, a lot of girls whose names start with K, and then two Ambers. Like a lot of just, I guess I do it that way because in case I'm about to say the wrong name, I make that first sound, then I have time to reboot. That sounds terrible. Like I'm some kind of fucking player. Like no, I'm gonna be 42 years old, and I'm just happy that any woman will be around me. But yeah, Amber and I got back together for a little bit, and she's acted for me and stuff. She's in. If you go watch the Black Friday trailer that's on here, she's the cop who's like, or she's a reporter, I think. She's like, you burned down his bird sanctuary or something like that. But yeah, she's come out and done that for me, and we talk constantly. When she's a mom now, and whenever she needs to know stuff about like comic books and whatever, she asks me because I'm her, I'm the nerd. But we were young and stupid, and clearly the pull of Freddy vs. Jason was stronger than my pull to be in a intimate relationship. So that is how Freddy vs. Jason broke up my first real relationship. And I'm making her sound terrible. Like I said, we were young and stupid. I probably could have sat it out and gone to see it another night and been a good boyfriend, but I was standing my ground. Plus, I had waited. I'd known Freddy and Jason longer than I knew her, These are the mental gymnastics that I'm still doing to this day, and it was 2002 or 2003. So that's it. That's my Friday the 13th story. How I was given the ultimatum, and depending on your point of view watching this video, I passed or I failed. So, yeah, that's it. Happy Friday the 13th. Happy October. Got a bunch more videos already shot that are coming. Did you ever have a situation like this? Your real Sophie's Choice kind of moment where, it's like I go see this movie, or I lose, my girlfriend, or whatever. I go to the school dance, or I go play high school baseball. Because that happened to me too one time. It was one time in middle school that I actually had a date to a dance, but I also had baseball that same day, and I literally, like, I was in 8th grade, and I literally can remember to this day, like, I was making lists on which ones to to do and all that, and I was frustrated and stressed out by it, and I eventually went to the baseball game, and the girl got pissed off because I wasn't there, and I promised I would be. And then in that game, I struck out 3 times. Technically, I guess if you count the dance, I struck out 4 times, so not the first time that's happened to me. I don't know, man. All right, happy Friday the 13th. I'm going to stop rambling. Bye.